now be recorded.
Hey, welcome to the February 16th, 2021 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. We'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This one next. Okay, tonight's decisions will be published in the Record Journal on Friday, February 19th, 2021. The effective date of your variance will be Friday, February 19th, 2021. The date a certified copy is recorded on land records. Statutory 15-day appeal period will expire on Sunday, March 7th, 2021. If you commence operations and/or construction during the appeal period, you do so at your own risk. I'd like to begin with a brief overview of the meeting's guidelines, as this meeting is a remote meeting. The meeting utilizes the GoToMeeting platform. Virtual meetings do not lend themselves to more than one speaker at a time or numerous devices running at the same location. Kindly mute your microphone when you are not speaking. Please also turn off extraneous devices such as it causes interference. I will call upon you when it is your turn for the floor. I will roll call the board members when time for decisions, questions, or voting. There's a chat feature which enables you to type questions or type a request for opportunity to comment. I will refer to the chat bar to call upon attendees one at a time and give you the floor. When it's your turn to speak, whether as an applicant or a member of the public, please first identify yourselves with your full name and address. It's very important. Board members present this evening are Samuel Carmody, Tom Wolfer, Lou Trawinsky, Karen Harris, and myself, Ray Rice, acting as the chair. Voting members this evening are Tom Carmody, Tom Wolfer, Lou Trawinsky, Karen Harris, who will be voting for Chairman Joe Rusek, and myself, Ray Rice. Thank you. Now, it's time to begin. The first item that we have here is item 20033, Hare 5 Gay Lane. Lewinsky, if you would. Read the variance request.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So in regards to variance number 20-033, variance request side yard setback for Hare at 5 Gay Lane, applicant requested a side yard setback of 6.9 feet where 36.7 feet exists and 20 feet is required to construct an addition and attached two-car garage at 5 Gay Lane in a R18 district. Applicant has submitted modification to proposal reducing the side yard variance requested to 10 feet in order to construct an attached garage and addition. We also have a letter received, looks like February 6th, to the Planning or Zoning and Planning Commission from Jason and Kara Quigley at 18 Lori Lane. I believe that is it for that one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here to speak?
Yes, hi. Brendan and Hillary Hare from 5 Gay Lane here.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, as was noted, we resubmitted documents to basically shrink the garage and the entry portion of the addition that we're requesting. As we noted last time, the house, anything forward winds up going over our steep driveway, so we can't sort of build forward in the space. And then in moving backwards, which we have considered the possibility of just pushing a detached garage backwards, which would allow us to build closer to the property line and build a bigger garage. But we've chosen not to move backwards because we get to woods really quickly. We lost a car to the trees earlier this year in a storm. We're trying not to build the structure into that space. So we've cleared things out enough that, in the space that we're asking to build, we wouldn't be at risk. But if we were to, take the option of, say, moving things further back or angling the garage, something like that, we'd be in proximity to that densely wooded area of the yard, which would then put the structure at risk.
Commissioners, you have questions?
Roll call. Sam, go one at a time.
Sam, do you have any questions?
No.
Tom, do you have any questions?
No.
Karen, do you have any questions?
No.
Lou, any questions?
I just want to make sure that I have this correct. So before, the proposed was 6.9 feet from the side yard, and now we're at, what are we at, 10? Is that where we're at? Yes?
That's correct.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you. Just want to make sure.
I have no questions. I'd like to go out to the public. Are there any questions in the public for this application? Any questions from the public against the application? If not, I'd like to bring it back
Karen has
to
a
the
question.
commissioners. Is there any commissioners that have any questions at this point? Or would you like to make motion?
I have one question, actually. I thought when I was reading, maybe it was the minutes from the last meeting, I thought I read that there was a stream in your backyard. There was some water.
It's not a stream back there. As you get to the back of the yard, it gets to a wet area that does, in the springtime sort of moves over to a stream that's in the neighborhood.
Okay.
But that would be building, at the very back of the yard where, it's densely wooded there, isn't, really a possibility for us.
Okay. So that would be another reason why you couldn't build back there, though. Not only the
Right,
woods, but also this stream, this water that's back there.
Correct.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, I have no questions. Do we have a motion?
Thank you.
I closed the public hearing and I'm requesting a motion from the commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve 20-033, 5 Gay Lane, variance request for side yard of 10 feet where 36.7 feet exist and 20 feet is required to construct an addition and attached garage as shown on submitted plans received January 29, 2021 and limited property boundary survey map. Land of Brendan Hare and Hillary Hare, 5 Gay Lane dated September 17th, 2020. Revision dated January 28th, 2021.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Now go in order. Roll call. Or in order like the sheet is.
Oh, okay.
Is that one?
Okay, we'll have a roll call vote now.
Want it?
M. Carmody,
Yes to approve.
Tom Wolfer,
Yes to approve.
Lou Serwinski,
Yes to approve.
Karen Harris,
Yes to approve.
and I vote yes. Motion's passed. Thank you very much. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you all.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is 20-034. A special exception request for daycare pumpkin patch properties for Circle Drive. Have correspondence, Mr. Zelinski?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, in regards to application number 20-034, special exception request for Daycare Pumpkin Patch Properties LLC for Circle Drive. Applicant is requesting child daycare center with enrollment of 117, an area of 7,825 square feet to allow a second floor single residential dwelling unit at 4 Circle Drive in an R18 district. Property has existing special exception approval for enrollment of 100 at the same site for entire 2-story building of 9,572 square feet. The added residential unit requires detailed building and potential site plan elements as residential use requires alternate building and fire code compliance. The board should consider the logistics of parking, access, use of grounds, and daycare operations at ground level of a residential unit. Applicant should clearly demonstrate the use of all space within the building and access to residential unit other than daycare operation/space. Proposal does not accurately or clearly define the interconnection of the two uses and spaces. There's also correspondence here, looks like received February, it's either 6th or 8th, interoffice memorandum from the Water and Sewer Division. Correspondence received February 2nd, looks like the Building Department. Correspondence February 2nd from the fire, and one sec. I believe that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Sam, do you have any questions? Pardon?
The applicant.
Oh, the applicant, I'm sorry. We can't forget him. Is the applicant here to address this?
Yes, hello. My name is Matthew Niski. I work at Giuliano Associates at 405 Main Street in Wallingford. With regards to this application, the builder that was involved with the project had a little accident, and unless he chimes in the next couple minutes, was not able to make it to tonight's meeting. So I will do everything I can to discuss the outside of the building, and I believe we were going to have to table till next month's meeting to discuss the inside of the building, which there seems to be some comments with staff on that.
Do we want to go ahead and table this now?
Would you like, sorry.
I think that probably would be appropriate at this point.
We're not prepared to present.
If the commission prefers, I can present at least the outside of the building, and then that way, if there's any comments on that, I can address them, and then that way for next meeting, we could have everything kind of buttoned up with no, okay.
I would prefer not to do that. Thank you.
Okay, then we request the tabling for next month's meeting.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Mr.
Members?
Chairman, I make a motion to table 20-034 Pumpkin Patch Properties to the next meeting, which will be on
15.
March. Take a look.
15th? March 15th.
Thank you, sir. March 15th.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Nay. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay. We have item 20-35. Variance request for front yard, side yard setback and building coverage. Acre at 4 Union Street. Okay, do we have any correspondence or anything on that, Lou?
yes, Mr. Chairman, in regards to application number 20-035, variance request, front yard, side yard, setback, and building coverage for Baker at 4 Union Street. Application is for side yard and front yard setbacks, as well as building coverage in order to locate accessory structure erected in violation. This office was advised of violation as a result of a stop work order issued by the building official, which was result of a complaint from neighbor that a 2-story structure was being erected too close to property boundary without any permits. Structure was in violation for height as well as location within side and front setbacks. Applicant was advised to reduce height to 10 feet maximum and relocate structure to compliant location. Applicant did remove the structure's excessive height, but did not relocate the structure. Applicant was advised an A2 survey is required to determine compliance with zoning requirements or to pursue relief from ZBA. Instead, applicant sought a survey waiver for setback distance and lot area. Survey waiver was granted for setback only. Lot area cannot be based on other than survey or deed, and therefore waiver of lot area was not approved. Based on site visit during the course of evaluating the survey waiver request, the site was found to also exceed maximum building coverage, requiring an additional variance due to another structure not originally depicted on application. There's no hardship concerning this application. The hardship is self-created and a result of choosing to remedy violation by seeking 3 variances for relief rather than choosing option to simply comply. That is it. There's also a map dated January 22nd, 2021, or a drawing, I should say. We also have one here from received December 16th. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hey. Would the applicant like to address the mission now?
Yes, good evening. My name is Jeffrey Baker, 4 Union Street, Wallingford, and this is my wife, Jillian. I have a statement that I'll read, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. Just as a brief forward, my wife has asked me not to take this process personally, but this is a deeply personal project to me. My daughter and I began designing this playscape together last spring as the pandemic first started to impact our lives. It's easy for us adults to take things like this for granted, but kids only get a limited number of recesses and field days in their lives. And losing out on those things due to an unprecedented worldwide pandemic is frankly unfair. And so I set out to replace our old ailing playscape with something that would provide a fun and safe place for our daughter and her small cohort of friends to enjoy, while also trying to build something that could last and evolve as our newest daughter, who joined us last May, grew up alongside her sister. Seeing as my wife and I are both essential employees, we've had to balance our work schedules with a newborn baby, while also helping our oldest through remote learning over the past year. And so in an effort to provide something to be excited about for our daughter, I used all of my vacation days and almost every weekend building her this playscape. It was something to look forward to during a very difficult year, and we were hoping to finish the project as soon as the weather allows, since although the distribution of the COVID vaccine has begun, we still don't know when life will go back to normal. As for the subject of this evening, I'll describe the hardships that face us on our property, and then I'll be happy to elaborate and answer any questions that the board may have. The first point I would like to make is regarding the size of our lot. Per the property deed, the total area of our lot is only 4,750 square feet. Per section 5.1A of the Wallingford zoning regulations, the minimum lot size for an R6 district, which is the smallest district in the regulations, is defined as 6,250 square feet, meaning our lot is 1,500 square feet or 24% under the minimum. For reference, the neighboring lot to ours on South Orchard Street is roughly 19,000 square feet or 4 times larger than ours, but is subject to the same regulations. Strictly enforcing the R6 zoning regulations on a lot that does not meet the minimum lot area defined under these regulations presents a hardship for the obvious reason that there's less room to work with. I believe the undersized condition of our lot should allow for exceptions to be made. Specifically, we are requesting a coverage variance of 1% above the allowed maximum. If our lot met the required minimum R6 lot area, all structures on the property totaled would only cover 26.2% of the property and be well under the allowed 33.5%. I believe the undersized condition of the lot should also be considered in relation to the variances for front and side yard setbacks. Regarding the front yard setback specifically, the regulations require a setback of 12 feet from the property boundary. We are requesting a variance of 6 feet, and while at first glance this appears to be requesting a 50% nonconformity, the actual measurement for front yard setback per section 5.2F of the regulations is measured as a distance from the center of the road. Considering the relevant section of South Orchard Street does not meet any of the special streets classifications in section 5.2F, the total distance required from the center of the street is 25 feet plus the 10 feet required for an R6 district, or 35 feet total. We are requesting a variance of 6 feet less than the required distance, which comes up to a nonconformity of only 17% based on the definitions in the regulations, which I reiterate, our property does not meet. Having to comply with the regulations when our property is considered to have 2 front yards presents another hardship, especially when compounded with the undersized condition of our lot. To put the requirements in perspective, the only usable outdoor area of our lot is 47.5 feet wide per the property deed, as you can see on the property drawing. Strict application of the regulations would require a setback of 12 feet to the west-facing front yard and 6 feet to the east-facing side yard. This means we would effectively lose 18 feet and only have 29.5 feet available. That 18 feet of setbacks comprises roughly 38% of the total width of our property, which is severely limiting. Additionally, although I can see that it is defined as such in the regulations, I also need to point out that the area in question is not a typical front yard. The entirety of the yard area is enclosed via a privacy fence and is only accessible through closed gates, which are located roughly 48 feet from the playscape. The entirety of the yard is also elevated from sidewalk level by the retaining wall along the west side of the property, which itself also reduces the effective size of our lot by several feet. Although this may be obvious, this area of the property also doesn't logically fit the standard expectations of a front yard, as it is opposite the front of the house. I believe it's also worth noting that the location of the structure was referred to in letters from both the town building department and the town planner as the back corner of the property. This leads into my next point, which is that the current location of the playscape is the exact same location our previous playscape stood for 3 years since we moved into this house in July 2017. This location was chosen for a number of reasons, not least of which because we were under the assumption that this was our backyard. I bring this up because we admittedly were not familiar with the zoning regulations, as I'm a first-time homeowner and was not advised to familiarize myself with the regulations. We believed the location of the old playscape and the new one by extension was suitable based on the example set by most other properties in this neighborhood. As this is the smallest residential zone in town and many of the lots in this area are undersized, the standard set around the residential zone in town, the standard set around the neighborhood is to place sheds, garages, and other accessory structures as close to the property boundaries as possible to minimize the effect on the available yard area. Strictly following the setbacks would sacrifice usable space on lots that don't have much to begin with, which is a hardship if the setbacks are to be strictly enforced. Placing structures near the center of these yards is also obviously not preferable, as it effectively cuts small yard areas into even smaller separated areas. We believed we were following the same rules that our neighbors were following when we placed the old split playscape in this location, and we were not informed of a violation at any point during this 3-year period. Enforcing the side yard setback regulations selectively presents a hardship to the lots that would be required to comply when the majority of the properties in this area do not. The current location is also the flattest area of the yard, as we live at the base of a hill, and therefore this area required the least modification to create a level grade. Leveling the opposite corner of the yard would present an additional hardship thanks to the remnants of a detached garage that was formerly located in this area of the property. Debris was found buried shallowly throughout this area of the yard when we redid our lawn in 2018 and could present unnecessary challenges if we were forced to move the playscape. Placing a playscape in this area of the yard would also compromise the privacy of our neighbors, as it would allow our children a direct view into both of their backyards while playing, which is something we choose to be considerate of. Moving the playscape also presents a hardship of cost and reconstruction time, and could also compromise the longevity of the playscape, as it was not designed to move. Moving the old playscape from our previous home in Wallingford was one of the primary reasons it became steady and ultimately unsafe. I designed and built the new playscape with the hopes that it would last for at least the duration of our children's stays at our home. We did not want to have to potentially replace store-bought playscapes several more times as our youngest daughter grew up, and so we decided to invest better materials into the construction of the new playscape. Moving the playscape would likely damage sections of the structure that are already built and will require the tedious removal of nails and screws to break down the structure into manageable pieces. In conclusion, I believe due to the undersized nature of our lot, the precedent set by other properties in our neighborhood and our own previous playscape, and for all the other reasons I have detailed in this statement, that we're deserving of the variances sought for coverage and front and side yard setbacks. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have or to elaborate on any of the points I've mentioned this evening. My family and I greatly appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. We will go to the commissioners now for questions. Sam Carmody, do you have questions of the applicant?
Not at the moment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Tom Wolfer, do you have questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Baker, prior to you moving to Union Street, this structure was in the yard where you, in your former house, correct?
Yeah, we lived on Circle Drive previously, and
Okay.
yes, we had it located in the yard at that time.
Okay. Now, when you purchased the house and you moved, did you visually see that you had enough area in the back there to put this playscape where it is now? Or did you just remove it from Circle Drive and bring it down and put it up and add a little bit to it?
I just want to clear up, Tom, the playscape that was at Circle Drive, we no longer have. We removed basically all elements of that and have replaced it with the current structure.
Okay, so this is a new design.
Yes, and new design in the same footprint that we had the previous structure, which was previously at Circle Drive.
Oh, okay. Wow. Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions for the applicant at this present time.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Lou, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So looking at the drawings, it looks like there's a revised version that was submitted. What exactly, in looking at this, is the revision on the drawing? Or is there not?
Can you confirm you're looking at Rev C in the bottom right corner?
Yes, and then I have Rev A alongside it.
Yeah, so the initial revision has been revised twice. That's how we get from A to C. In the top right corner, you'll see some notes. In Rev B, I added a gazebo measuring 165 square feet. Amy mentioned that in the letter that you wrote that was missing from the original drawing. I wasn't again super familiar. I'm by no means still not an expert in planning and zoning, but I hadn't included that because I wasn't aware that even though it doesn't have walls, it still met the definitions of a structure. And so that got added. And then there were also, I was informed that the property deed deviated from the measurements of length and width of the property. And so you'll see the measurements marked on the drawing are now reflective of the dimensions on the deed. As you'll see, I believe I also attached the zoning permit from Tom Talbot, which mentioned that we could not waive the lot area. That was the main change there.
Okay.
Between
And-
B and C, yeah.
So you're saying, so the structure that you have up now, right? So when you look at like where the structure was before,
Yeah.
it looks to me like it was closer to the house. This where you have it now and where you're proposing to keep it is more towards essentially the back fence of the yard. If you're or the side.
I can actually show you. I'm not allowed to share my screen. It says ask the originator and makes you presenter. I have pictures of the old playscape. If you'd like to see those, I'd be happy to share those somehow. But the footprint was identical between the old playscape and the new. I don't have them printed out, unfortunately.
That's what I was asked. That's what I was essentially getting at was
Did
so
the
the
commissioners
footprint
get
is
them?
exactly the same.
When you've done, I need to comment.
Yeah,
before I go further.
you want to comment? Okay. Just hold on 1 minute. Amy would like to comment.
Sure.
Okay, I just want to clarify a couple points as we're moving forward here. First of all, this is not a playscape. It may be how it's being used as a playhouse. A swing set and a accessory structure are two different things. So it's not replacing a playscape with a playscape. Playscapes do not have to follow the same guidelines. So just to clarify that for the board. So a swing set could be where it was. The idea of the theory being it's portable. It's not a permanent structure, nor does it meet the definition of a building. This is an accessory building being utilized. So it's not old versus new. It's we replaced one thing with another. So
If I may, Amy, excuse me.
let me continue. So please, and we'll turn it back to you to respond.
Thank you.
That's for clarification on that. Secondly, it was a matter of a few feet. Just to clarify again, that would have been compliant until we discovered that there was also more buildings. But I just wanted to make the point to understand that playscapes do not have to follow the setback regulations like a structure of building does. So it's not a new one. So whether somebody moved one from a previous location, Mr. Wolfer, that would be okay. If the swing set or the earlier playscape structure came along with the move. It's just something different. So it's just a point of order, and I'll turn it back to the chairman for a follow-up from the board and the applicant.
So if I can continue, I guess my question is and maybe I'm missing something here, but do we have actual pictures of the current structure or playscape?
In your packet.
They should have been in your packet, Lou.
I don't.
This packet.
Your first packet.
There's a letter and it had all kinds of pictures.
Well, continue on.
Yeah, it was a typical playscape.
That's Amy is saying.
Are you done, Lou? Or do you have any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Okay, Karen Harris, you have questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Baker, I thought I heard you say that the square feet for your lot actually is not the number of square feet that's on the deed. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, so again, I don't know if that's in the scope of this meeting, but I was informed by Tom during an audit, as I call it, that the measurement that I used on my original draft of the drawing, which I submitted in December, did not match what was shown on the deed. And I sent a follow-up explanation of how I calculated that, how I measured that. But Tom has insisted, and I'm not here to argue that that what goes is what's on the deed goes. So there is some disagreement there. But again, I don't know if that's necessarily in the scope of this meeting or not. One of the reasons why it became relevant was because, per my measurements, the additional variance for coverage would not have been required. But per the measurements on the deed, it did put me over the coverage allowed.
Are you calculating a bigger lot than what's on the deed?
My measurements came out to slightly larger than what is shown on the deed. And again, I don't know that we need to resolve that at this meeting. But yes, what I measured was roughly 3 feet larger in width along the front of the property.
You might want to have a survey and then get a corrected deed if you think that's the case. I have no other questions.
So my question is, the definition of a playscape versus what I saw, which appeared to be like 2 buildings with a structure in the middle. Are these buildings accessible to store stuff in?
I mean, they have a roof, and therefore their buildings, I believe, is the rule. What I was going to mention when Amy was speaking was, well, I don't disagree that these structures are more significant. They're more significant by design. The old playscape did include a structure by definition, as it had a roof. And really all that I'm asking is that we follow the same rules for all things. I don't disagree that was a playscape, but the zoning permit I received has also been issued for playscape in the rear of yard. The purpose of this structure is a playscape for my children. We're not looking for additional storage, and yeah, there's a swing set.
It has a swing set.
We'd like to add a slide. Again, it's unfinished. So yes, that is the purpose of it. And again, if my understanding from Amy is there is technically no definition for a playscape. But again, I'm not the expert, so I defer to her.
I need to read it. Okay, the definition of a building: any structure having a roof supported by columns or walls or intended for a shelter, housing, or enclosure of persons, animals, or materials. Any other structure more than 8 feet high shall be considered as a building, including a fence or a wall, but excluding public utility pole or flagpole. For the purposes of these regulations, there shall be no differentiation between permanent buildings and temporary buildings. All buildings shall comply with the requirements in the regulations. I do sympathize with you very much because I know how important it is to have this playscape, especially when you have children. I went through that many years ago, and I understand the circumstances now. But even though with the circumstances, you really should have been looking at putting up another playscape that was similar, instead of 2 buildings, which actually ruin the coverage of your property. Because if you take a look at your property, you got these 2 buildings, you got the other one up on your deck, you got the garage on the side. A lot of the property is taken up by this. I'm not totally convinced that this is a playscape. I really think that it's more like 2 buildings with a swing in the middle. That's my comments.
By your definition that you read, that also would have been our previous playscape, which was also over 10 feet as well. And we never heard anything from, which is when we originally built our play escape that we currently have, we made it over 10 feet, not knowing that this would be an issue because our previous play escape in that same location had been over 10 feet with walls and columns and a roof. It also was hit by the tornado that came through Wallingford, which is why it was damaged, which is why we wanted to build something that was more sustainable because another tornado could come through. Another pandemic could hit. We have lots of reasons that we felt that we needed to have space for our children to be able to play at home.
Okay, now I'm gonna go out to the public. Is there anybody in the public that wants to support this? Is there anybody in the public who wants to speak against this? Hearing nobody from the public, I close the public hearing and I bring it back to the commission. Sam, do you have any other questions or comments?
Just for my clarification, can I ask Amy a question? So just so I have this correct, originally the structure was over 10 feet and the applicant reduced the height so that it was compliant, right? So you did.
From a height perspective, correct.
From the height perspective. And then just my understanding for the survey waiver for setback distance and lot area that they sought, they were granted the survey waiver for setback, right?
That is correct. And I will remind the board that there is also another regulation which requires an A2 survey for a variance. So that should not have had a waiver in lieu of, but they did. And upon a site visit from the town planner and myself to assist in that granting of the waiver to measure, if you will, that was determined that they in fact had located it the distance they were claiming from the property line, because about the there's monuments in the sidewalk at the location. So we were able to conclude that that was adequate to determine the distance of setback. However, there is nothing to determine lot area without a survey other than a deed. You know, we can't just, again, it's another requirement, but we're kind of overlooking that and looking at more just strictly the request for variances. That was included for the board's clarification to see sort of the evolution. And as the applicant has stated earlier, measurements are pertinent. They're part of this record because this application was submitted and continued because it needed to be amended. Originally, it would have needed to move 4 feet in one direction and 6 feet in another and been compliant. But we discovered that there was also access buildings that on top of it. So again, it all comes back to a survey waiver is not adequate to support a variance request typically. It needs to be exact. And the only way it's exact is by a land surveyor to tell us precisely how far it is, how tall it is, and they locate all those structures and such on. So gazebo and whatnot would have been noted. All those are noted on your plot plans, on your limited boundary surveys that are provided by our land surveyor, which is a requirement in our regulations since 2009. So we let this go the other route with the survey waiver, but we can't say that your measurements are better than what the deed says, you know, so we don't have any purview to disagree with the deed.
And if in the lot area, I mean, the lot area, it's just a foot, right? That they're over. I mean, sorry, 1%.
It was 300 and something square feet. The original claim was more than the lot actually is. And a structure that wasn't noted, was not represented initially, the gazebo. So the two things together, reducing the lot area and having another structure. You have the ability, for example, these are 3 separate variances. You could grant building coverage to them and not grant the setback.
Right.
Therefore, in other words, structures could remain and have to be moved, for example. Or you could grant the setbacks and not the coverage, and then something else would have to go. I mean, you do have the purview of taking these individually and having a resolution of any or all. You know, it's not an all or nothing. So,
Mhm.
so the resolution will depend on your determination. So, but again, originally it was strictly moving it. It was only setbacks we were seeking, not knowing all these other things, which is what caused the modification and the continuance. So rather than just moving it. So
Am I still, I can still ask a question of the applicant?
Yes.
well, he's closed the public hearing. If Ray wants to reopen it, you can address the applicant. Again, if that's what you all choose to have some further discussion.
I guess, then my question, so, okay. Well, then, you know, I don't know. My question is going to be, you know, just for clarification on the location on the lot, they're you know, they made it sound to me that that there really was not an alternative based on the undersized lot and the you know, some situations with the land there. But my question was just to clarify that. But
And then that is not the case. It is a very forgiving zone, the least requirements. So again, it would mean 6 feet.
But it is another,
the
the lot size is significantly smaller than
Correct.
a lot size in the R6 zone, right?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay. That's it for now.
Okay. Tom, do you have any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I also have a question for staff, if I may ask her. Amy, upon your visit, when you went out there, you placed a stop work order. Was that the playscape under construction at that point in time, or what was the deal with that?
That was the chronology is that was from the building department, from the building official, because there was construction undergoing without permits, which
Okay.
again, for a shed of a limited size or an accessory structure of under 200 square feet would not be required. However, the neighbor, being that it's a foot away from the property line and also raised in the air and then 2 stories, alerted the building department something was going on, and looking out their bedroom window, there's a structure happening and what was going on. And to the building official, having no permits for any such structure, issued the stop work order and advised zoning as well, at which time I contacted the property owner and advised what needed to happen to rectify that, which again was taking the height down and just moving it. That would have been the end. So
Thank you. Yeah, you know, basically, you know, the opening comments by the applicant were clearly understood that, you know, the use of the playscape basically wanted to be used for the family and during these times to have more one-on-one playtime, what have you. But, you know, we deal with this every month, that, you know, there's really no hardship that was there that caused it. But, I mean, we're talking at the end here, we're talking maybe 1 foot and a minimal amount of space that's questionable. I really think that an A2 survey needs to be handed in, and we need to consult it to be fair to the applicant, because probably if we don't and we look at it face value, it may not be fair to him to know that. But that's my opinion on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Lou, do you have questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So, question for staff. So in the notes, there was a mention of a complaint from a neighbor. And well, actually, this isn't for, let me rephrase that. That was actually more for the applicant, but we've closed that part of the hearing. So Amy, what you're saying is that the structure could be relocated and be in compliance. Is that what we're saying?
There is a 12-foot front yard setback for that particular zone.
Mhm.
And a 6-foot side setback. That could be done by moving the shed 6 feet in one direction for the two buildings and away from the abutting property by a foot by another 5 feet, because it's a 6-foot side yard setback. Again, it would, yes, would it be in a less desirable area of the yard, but it is able to be moved, could be reduced. There's a number of things that would have fixed it, and we wouldn't be here. Again, this is I mean, we have to, as was mentioned, unfortunately, hardships have nothing to do with the individuals. They have to do with the property. So, and that's real hard to remove people out of it. It's real hard. It is emotional and it's painful. But that's the law. That's the legal grounds for granting relief. Is you don't have, something is unique does not allow you to have proper use of your property. You know, there is a home, there is a garage, there is a shed, there is a gazebo. How one uses our accessory structures, whether we put our stuff or have children play in them, it doesn't, it's still an accessory structure. So again, were we not allowing reasonable use of the property by not allowing that? That's your determination. That is the grounds of a hardship. Again, it's very hard. We're all suffering with COVID and the restrictions on our lives and our travels and lack thereof in our work and livelihoods. But unfortunately, that's not a hardship. Because it will hopefully go away.
So my other question for you was, you know, the applicant had brought up the neighborhood and what's kind of typically accessible. And I know we're talking about this specific application, but I'm just went on Google Earth, for example, right? So I'm looking at neighboring properties, and it looks like there's structures that are close to the property line. Now, granted, this is essentially a static image and not real time, but any comment on that? And, you know, are those approved? Do we have any information on that? Like, where does that fall into this whole equation about what's acceptable and what's not?
Again, we'd have to look at individual properties, Mr. Sherwinski, and what conditions, because they're all, I mean, whether they had a variance granted, whether they existed, these accessory structures could have predated zoning as well. The applicants themselves, not them, but the prior owner, which shows that a variance follows the land, not individuals, but the prior owner had the variance granted to construct the garage on that particular building. So they're all apples and oranges. Yes, there are varying lot sizes, but we don't know how old the buildings are. With research, certainly could provide that information to you.
Yeah, just that there's what I'm looking at. There's a fair amount of structures pretty close to these property lines. I'm going to throw that out there.
The age of the neighborhood too, you know, the neighborhood as a whole predates zoning. So, you know, unfortunately zoning came along and plunked its head on the top of existing lots, which, you know, as the Bakers have of an undersized one, some do not, but you know, that whole area predates zoning. So what the situation is with individual structures, I can't tell you without doing research for you. So
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it for me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Lou. I think I mentioned my concerns in the beginning. I think that the homeowner really needs to look over and reassess. At this point, I would not be in favor of voting on this individual. I'm not voting on it, but I'm not in favor of what is presented. Yes, Karen, you have another question?
Yeah, I also have questions for Amy, and I may have I may be repeating the question that was already asked of Amy, but
Oh, you want to speak to Amy?
yeah, please.
Okay, here you go.
So Amy, I apologize because I think Lou probably asked this question, but I just want to make it clear in my head so it maybe would be worth repeating the answer, at least for me.
Sure.
And I guess correct me if I'm being actually inappropriate by asking this question, but what could be the easiest route for compliance of this situation? You know, the recommendation. I don't know if it's moving something a couple of feet. I just wanted to. Is that an appropriate question for me? Can I ask that?
It's certainly, what are some alternate solutions? So for example,
Right.
Which is where I did go, and perhaps I didn't articulate it clear enough. There's three separate
Just wanna make
variants.
sure
No, there's three variances being requested: a front yard, a side yard, and building coverage. So with the information that we have presented, which is strictly the deed, because we do not have benefit of a survey, we have to go with that number. So there is a building coverage issue. So moving a structure is not enough to be compliant, because now we're also over. Something would have to go. It doesn't have to be that. Something would have to go to shave it down or determine otherwise that in fact, via a survey, that it was not over on coverage. So if it were, you could approve, for example, I'll give you an example. You could, since there are three separate variances, you'll be voting separately on each one. You could approve there to be excessive building coverage on the lot, but not approve the setback, meaning that they would be allowed to keep it and just have to move it.
Got it.
Or the opposite. Or you could approve the setbacks, but now we have it located there, but now, and not the coverage, so now something else would have to go, whether it's the gazebo or that amount of, so it's not an all or nothing package. So the solution depends on your determination. So again, movement would be, which is what we initially thought we were dealing with, strictly a setback issue, which therefore compliance would be just simply move it. But now we have this coverage issue. So you bear that in mind, that you are making a determination on you're making three separate motions and actions on this particular application that will determine the solution, either all approved, all denied, or some of each.
Okay.
So
Then I have one other question. And the gazebo that you noted when you were there, is that a permanent structure, or is that something that could, fairly easily be removed in order to bring them into compliance on the coverage?
that's something that, again, it's in your purview. Yes, it certainly can be removed, and they have another small shed there. So again, making up for the building coverage doesn't have to necessarily come from these structures that we're dealing with. So that could be a condition, for example. Same something else you have in your purview that will allow you to leave it where it is, but we're not going to approve the building coverage, or under the condition that gazebo is removed or something. But yes, you have, that is a portable quote structure, but it counts against building. So
do we know that if, say, the gazebo were removed, would that put them into compliance on the coverage?
on the coverage, yes. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Clear enough? Okay.
And I guess the just one other question, sorry.
That's okay.
The complaint that was filed originally had to do with how close the structure was to the
side yard, on the side yard.
And the height?
And the fact that it appeared to be on the boundary, and in fact, it's 1 foot off. So, and the houses are close together there. They all have very small setbacks, and some meet them and some don't. As I mentioned to Mr. Sherwinski before, same thing with structures. How long things have been there, and they may, the whole house may be 3 feet from the property line, but yes, they're rather close together. And so it was a little, I guess, unsettling to wake up. I'm sure the height had quite a bit to do with it. You know, if you're on your second floor,
Yeah.
and their yard is raised off the ground. There's a retaining wall along the sidewalk, which
Has
makes
the
it,
height been lowered?
the height has been, yes, he took the seconds, yes. Height has been lowered, structures
And-
remain.
And when you said it was actually 1 foot off, does that mean it was 1 foot in on his property line, not 1 foot over onto the neighbor?
That's correct, that's correct. He's on his property, 5 foot.
Okay.
So.
Okay, are you all set, Karen?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Is there any other questions by the commission? If not, do we have motion? I make a motion that the variance request for front yard of 6 feet where 12 feet is required to locate a 114 square foot accessory structure as submitted on submitted plans received on January 22nd, 21. Subject to the conditions as recorded. Have a second?
Second.
Don't go in order.
What?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Just clarification, I'm sorry, the motion was to approve?
Yeah, always in the affirmative, correct.
Mhm. Okay. Pam Carmody,
Yes to approve.
Tom Wolfer,
Yes to approve.
Lou Serwinski,
Yes to approve.
Aaron Harris,
Yes to approve.
and I vote no. Okay. A variance request for side yard of 1 foot or 6 foot is required to locate a 114 square foot accessory structure as shown on submitted plan received February 22nd, 21, subject to conditions as recorded.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Carmody,
Yes to approve.
Tom Wolfer,
Yes to approve.
Mr. Lou Sawinski,
Yes to approve.
Mr. Karen, Mrs. Karen Harris,
Yes to approve.
I vote no. Okay, variance request building coverage of 34.5% or maximum of 33.5 is permitted to construct an accessory structure of 114 square feet as shown on submitted plan received January 22nd, 21, subject to the conditions as.
Second.
Okay,
I'm seconded. You gotta go with your vote.
Pam Carmody,
Yes to approve.
Tom Wolfer,
No to approve.
Lou Serwinski,
Yes to approve.
Aaron Harris,
No to approve.
and I vote no. Approved.
Two were approved, coverage is not.
Coverage has not been approved. Okay. Moving on.
Sorry, just to confirm, the coverage was not approved, but the setbacks were.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all very much for your time.
That means something has to be.
Good night.
Okay. We have a draft of the meeting conducted on January 19th. We want to make a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to accept as submitted.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And I guess that should,
Oh, wait, one point of order.
yes, you want to,
Yeah,
okay, hold on a minute.
I'm making a quick point of order on our discussion items. We had an item last month that was withdrawn in order to resubmit a modification. They have in fact resubmitted that modification, which will be on next month's agenda. However, one solution to doing it in this manner rather than continuing it with different evolutions was putting it out to the board if you would approve a waiver of their reapplication fee for 26 Beechwood. So I'll turn it back to the chair, but that's what that item on the agenda is regarding.
Okay,
So, yeah.
we have a motion to adjourn.
No, you gotta make a motion to waive
Hold
it.
on,
Make a motion on to waive the application fee or not.
to waive the application.
Yes,
And you-
the fee for the
Oh.
reapplication.
I think we have to make a motion to waive the fee on the application that Amy just discussed.
Right. Waiver of the reapplication fees for 26 Beechwood Drive, and that would be 20-037.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, now we can have a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, the minutes were okay.
Make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Someone needs to
All in
second that.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks, Ray. Good job.
Okay, have a good evening.